Welcome to today's episode of Bring Your A Game with A-Patt. Today, I am joined with a special guest, Camiel Grant of Newton High School, former coach, now assistant athletic director. I'm gonna just let him kind of introduce himself, and we'll dive right into it.
Okay. Well, like you said, my name is Camiel Grant. I'm at Newton High School. I'm in my 14th year actually at Newton High School. I am the current assistant athletic director, former head football coach. I was head football coach the past 4 seasons. Before that, I was an assistant at Newton for several years. Prior to that, an assistant football coach at Mundy's Mill, and prior to that, an assistant football coach at MLK High School in DeKalb County, which is where I started my high school coaching career uh, about 22, 23 years ago now, in high school coaching, and spent 1 year coaching at the college level at Morris Brown College after I finished playing there.
Okay.
Originally from Greene County down the Lake Oconee area. Some
Okay.
people are
Okay.
probably
I know
familiar
about
with
Green.
Lake Oconee.
No way.
That's my hometown. Um, and I've been around football my whole life. My dad was a high school football coach at Hancock Central High School in Hancock County, and football was just always a part of my life. I was always around it. Played other sports. I ran track and played baseball in high school as well. But I guess with my dad being a football coach, football was always what kind of with us. Was a Pittsburgh Steelers fan from way back in the '70s, and
Mhm.
still am today. Even though it's not as easy to be a Steelers fan, especially after last night.
Yeah, right, right. We can tell by your
uh,
for those who watch the video, we can tell by your seat cover too.
yeah, yeah. So, um, but like I said, my dad was a coach, man, and that's what really I think. As I look back on it, being around him and at a young age, and him always being with high school athletes, um, it was something that was planted, a seed that was planted right out of college. I actually went to work for the government for about 8 to 10 years,
Okay,
and um, was coaching at the recreational level.
okay.
And I had really no intentions of being a teacher. My dad, like I said, my dad was an educator. My mom was an educator, and me and my siblings, it was like we don't want to be teachers. We that's not what we want to do.
Got you.
And I actually got into teaching, to be honest with you, to be a high school football coach. And
Uh-huh.
I just felt like that was the quickest and easiest route to accomplish that.
Makes sense.
And got in as a math teacher, and actually found out that, in addition to coaching, that I really enjoyed the teaching profession, and realized that the teaching and the coaching are very similar, really not different at all.
Really?
Coaches are just teachers, which we're teaching a sport. But um, and as I look back on it now, it was a big decision career wise, but it was
Mhm.
probably one of the best decisions that I think I've made in terms of my career, because I've never, since I got into teaching at the high school level, I've never felt like I didn't want to go work. They keep you uh, energized, and it's always something to look forward to. Is that one day is never the same.
Mhm.
It's always a different day when you're dealing with kids, and that's kind of led me to where I am now, and it's been a fun ride so far.
I got you. Yeah, I mean, speaking of fun rides, your school Newton was making a lot of noise this past football season. Scored some big wins. Thought they would make a run, but of course, in those high classifications for just in high school football in Georgia, it's pretty tough. What is just kind of your when you look back on it? What did you love most about the season, and what do you think about the seasons to come for Newton?
Good question. I've been at Newton, like I said, for 14, 15 years. And when I first came to
None of
Newton,
that. None of that.
Newton had a history of not being very good in football at all. 1 and 9 seasons, 2 and 8. And I was fortunate enough to work with a guy by the name of Nick Collins, who was the head coach at the time.
Mhm.
And, he had a vision on how to get the program turned around. And a lot of what we are experiencing now, those seeds were planted about 14, 15 years ago by Coach Collins and, a lot of other guys that were on the staff. And the current head coach, he actually came on with us a few years after that. And so the most exciting thing was watching a young guy that, I had mentored some, who had been a part of the staff, who understood
Mhm.
what the history of Newton was, watching him take the baton and move us to the next level. Um, and and in particular, and I have to be honest with you, the win over Grayson was a big milestone for us,
Mhm.
um, just because that seemed like another hurdle that we needed to get over to take our program to the next level. But just watching, Coach Skelton, his growth and the way that he's able to move the program forward, that was the most exciting thing. And you're right. We really felt like we were poised to make a deep run. Um, and, as we know, Camden County ended up being a very formidable opponent for not only us, but for two or three other teams down the road.
Mhm.
But I'm excited about where we're going. We're we're not a secret. People in the 7A classification know who Newton is.
Mhm.
Um, Recruiters from around the country know who we are. We've got kids playing all over the country. So from that standpoint, we're not a secret. But I think the exciting part is now we're on the cusp of becoming a program that can literally be legitimately considered as a state championship contender.
Mhm.
And I think it's going to be fun to watch. And I'm just happy that I can still be around it and be a part of it in some small way.
Agree, agree, man. I'm looking forward to seeing what Newton does for the seasons to come. You definitely love a school like that that took some time to build and finally break those milestones, and then hopefully, eventually, it's not easy to win a state championship, but
No,
get close enough and possibly do it. And that kind of
right.
goes into my next question. The state championship games are this next week, starting Monday at Mercedes-Benz Stadium from Monday to Wednesday. Um, prior years it was at Georgia State Stadium, now back at Mercedes-Benz. Um, what are your feelings toward it being back at the Benz, and what are you looking the most forward to just with the state championship games coming up?
Well, I'm glad it's back at Mercedes Benz, just because I think that's a great venue in terms of the excitement for the kids and the fans and the schools and the communities. You know, I've I'm old enough to remember, when you played your state championships at your home stadiums.
Yeah, I hated that. Hated that.
Uh, and and uh, and Georgia State, don't get me wrong, Georgia State was a good venue. Football purists, I'm sure, like it when football is played outside in the elements.
Mhm.
But I think just for the fans and the high school athlete in the state of Georgia, the excitement of getting an opportunity to play in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium, in the same stadium that professional teams play in, I think that is what makes it even more special. Um, the neutral site thing, you know, I don't know. I can take it or leave it. I don't have a problem with a home field advantage, and I don't have a problem with a neutral site. But
Mhm.
I just think that just the element of being in the stadium that the professional teams play in just brings another level of excitement to it. So I'm glad that we were able to get it back. It's going to be interesting this year with the games being, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday,
Of course.
and let's see how that affects the attendance for some of those games on, early in the week. those South Georgia teams and extreme North Georgia teams, you know, those are the places that are likely to close school for the day. you know, I don't know how much Metro teams would be into doing that, but um, hopefully that doesn't create a big drawback because there's always been some good crowds. Um, I think that there are teams that you have teams that have never been there before that are trying to make a name for themselves. There on many occasions, the Cedar Groves of the world, and
Mhm.
uh,
Oh,
so I think it's shift in the power structure, so to speak. But in the highest classification, you've got the first time since 1985, I believe, where there's not a team from Gwinnett or from South Georgia, which is exciting.
mhm.
Some new blood. So I think that there's a lot of little stories in there that get people excited. Um, and so, the Milton and Walton matchup, I think if you like offense
Oh, you're in
and you
for
like good
one.
quarterback play, you're in for a show there. So um, it's exciting. We were talking about it in class the other day. We're looking forward to putting the TV on and having it playing throughout the day. And as the classes come through, they get a chance to peek at it a little bit. And, you know, it motivates the kids to want to get to that point. Um, so this is going to be a fun start of the week next week.
Oh yeah, for sure, for sure. And just to let the viewers know, and of course you as well, my alma mater, Manchester High School, playing for a state championship against Bowden Monday, first time since 1997, the year that they actually won a state title, that this team is back. So that in itself will get me excited. I'll be at the game, of course. But for you, are there any games that, well, I guess with it being Monday through Wednesday, you probably don't have the flexibility to be at those games, but are there any games
Right.
that you maybe want to try to go to, or that you're definitely gonna keep your eye on?
Well, just because we're in the highest classification, we're always keeping an eye on that 7A state championship game, no matter who it is. Just because you want to see what it is possibly going to take to win
Mhm.
a state championship at that level. You want to see what those teams are doing. Um, the Stockbridge game has a lot of interest for me because the DC at Stockbridge is a former player at Newton that I had an opportunity to coach,
Ah, okay.
David Hill, DJ Hill, and he also coached with us after he finished playing at the University of Virginia. So keeping my eyes on that one. And it's funny you mentioned Manchester. Manchester is another one that's interesting to me because my college roommate is from Manchester,
Really?
and yes, class of 1987, and that one is interesting. I don't know if you certainly don't remember it because you weren't born at the time, I would imagine, but you may have heard that there was, I think it was 84, 85, somewhere in that neighborhood. Manchester was 10-0 with 10 shutouts.
Yep, that's what they talk about all the time. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. And so that was a big thing around the state at the time. You would pick up the paper on Saturday morning to see if the streak was going. And so it was fun to me to get to college my freshman year and meet somebody from Manchester. And that guy ended up being my roommate and lifelong friends with him. So the Manchester game is one that I'll be keeping an eye on as well.
Just who is the roommate? I may know him or may not because I'm younger,
Uh,
but
Vin- Vincent Gamble.
oh, that definitely sounds familiar. That sounds very familiar. I'm pretty sure my parents know him. That seems he seems kind of around the age or year that they graduated. So
Okay.
I
Yeah,
definitely
yeah,
know should have mentioned that. Yeah, of course,
yeah, for sure.
man.
Yeah.
Of course. Um, another thing I did want to ask you was, we just talked about the state title games and games that intrigued you. But also with high school and I guess the future of high school going on right now, you know,
Hmm.
NILs, I guess NIL was approved this season, gonna be here in the future. I also believe the kind of like college, I believe the transfer rules have changed a lot and whatnot. How do you see the future of Georgia high school football for years to come?
It's going to be it's going to be interesting. That's the most politically correct thing I can say. Um, First, when you talk about the transfers, the rules in Georgia have been the same for decades, right?
Mhm,
The issue has always been that Georgia high school does not have a investigative arm. So Georgia high school is not in the business of investigating whether a transfer or a move was legal or legitimate. There is a process, and there are documents that you have to file with the Georgia High School Association.
mhm,
Um, but I think all the coaches across the state, understand that. So I don't see anything. I'm just going to say that kids will freely move from program to program.
mhm,
I don't think that we'll ever stop that. And in recent years, there have been some people that have started a movement, so to speak, to replace the Georgia High School Association. Um, and some of those people are want even more free movement of athletes and school choice and those things. So um, I don't think that we'll I think we're beyond the point where there will be any significant hindrance to kids moving from program to program.
right,
And and you got some people where they think that's a problem, and then you got other people that don't see anything wrong with that. So I don't think that's going to be the biggest issue that we'll face in high school sports in the state. The NIL, on the other hand, I think has the potential to make an unlevel playing field that already exists
mhm,
even more unlevel. Um, I think Georgia High School was in a very precarious situation because you couldn't afford to continue to deny the NIL availability.
mhm,
I don't think that would have held up legally had someone challenged it down the line. At the same time, I should say, again, Georgia High School is not a very large organization. They don't have a very large budget. So you're not talking about them having the ability to really govern NILs.
mhm,
There's a policy in place, and that policy pretty much says you can't use performance, you can't use any images or likenesses that are associated with your school. You can't use game film and those things uh, in the securing or execution of an NIL deal. Um, we have to report what those deals are. If a kid gets an NIL, it can't be monies that are pooled by the school
mhm,
or the athletic department or things of that nature. But again, those are very loose parameters.
right,
What worries me more than anything is the kids starting to participate in NILs prior to getting to high school.
mhm,
And I think it's just going to change the landscape of the way you have to coach this next generation of player. I think the element of sacrifice for team um, is going to change. I think you're going to have to be conscious of the fact that some of these kids are going to be extremely popular by the time they arrive in ninth grade.
mhm,
Um, they're going to have a following. Some of them are going to have NIL deals already in place. I think there's going to be some schools that are going to be very progressive in terms of how they attack it and how they put things together. And I do think it's going to lead to some recruiting, for lack of a better term. Um, but it's not going away. You don't put that cat back in the bag. So, my thing for the next generation of high school coaches is going to be, you better have a plan in place on how you deal with this new kid,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of a kid that's been exposed to the celebrity and the business side of the game. Whereas in the past, those elements at the youth level were things that we didn't have to be so concerned about. You're going to have a plan for those things. And I think guys will, as younger coaches come in, the stuff won't be unfamiliar to them. You'll get coaches that are coming out of the college ranks that have participated in it
Mm-hmm.
as coaches or as players. Um, and so it's going to be a different landscape. It's going to be um, a lot more media driven, a lot more uh, emphasis put on promotion.
Mm-hmm.
Your program is going to have a plan for promoting kids, and not just to college recruiters, but promoting kids in the media. And I think the smaller counties, the counties that are, you know, in remote areas, I think that they'll survive without those things a little bit longer, because it's just tougher for kids to move around
Right.
in some of those areas. Um, but the money's going to get bigger. And as it does, then you'll have kids and families that have the opportunity to move, to take advantage of it. So um, I'm I'm not necessarily looking forward to it. I'm interested to see how it plays out,
Of course.
right? And I'm kind of glad that that's not a headache that I'm gonna have to worry about as a coach.
Definitely. I can understand that, man. So many variables and things going on with that. That kind of, and funny enough, that goes into my next question. You were obviously an assistant coach. Now you're an assistant athletic director. What has been the biggest change in those roles, and what are some things that the average person that doesn't really know what goes on between those two roles should know or appreciate more about being an assistant athletic director?
Well, the biggest change is now your focus goes more to the overall athletic department, and how you can make sure that all sports are working together for a goal of Newton athletics, as opposed to being the head football coach or being the head baseball basketball coach. Your focus, and rightfully so, is more on your program. And when you're at the table as a head coach, I'm not going to say you're not concerned about other programs, but your biggest concern is what your program needs and how the athletic department can help get your program to the next level. But sitting in the seat as an assistant athletic director, now those secondary sports become important. And
Hmm.
how do we integrate? How do we share court time? With volleyball and basketball. How do we share weight room time with all of the sports wanting to get in the weight room, and football being the biggest program? And how do we create a situation where the other sports that generate revenue can help the sports that don't generate revenue?
Hmm.
How do we share athletes? How do we make sure that our best athletes are getting the opportunity to help some of these secondary sports, have the same success that our major sports are having?
Hmm.
So it's just a different focus. You're not so one sport focused, and it's more about dealing with adults and getting adults to work together, as opposed when you're the head coach of a particular sport. It's about bringing the kids and the team together. You're still trying to bring a team together, but now it's a team of coaches who you need to sell to them. I always say at Newton that the end is more important than our individual uh, aspirations. We must protect the end first. So how do you sell that to a group of adults, and at the same time still help them be successful in their individual programs and help them get the things that they need?
Yeah, got you. Got you. Yeah. Yeah, I know that always varies from each school because each school, athletics mean different things for different sports at each school. And,
Correct.
having to navigate, if head coach for basketball wants more in the budget versus like, a school that primarily focus on football as their biggest sport. I know
Correct.
that could
Correct.
be, some of the things you deal with as well. So I'm glad you were able to mention that. As well, just before you go, I did want to go over the slate of games and I guess give a few picks for this weekend
Okay.
games. I'll play along too. And of course,
Okay.
this is why you play the games, even if we pick,
Right.
you just give me your pick. But who did you pick for Swainsboro and Prince Avenue Christian?
I'm going to go with Swainsboro.
Okay, okay. This is like a popular choice among South Georgia people, especially.
Right. 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 I'm a little biased when it comes to that. I'm a small town guy.
Oh, I'm interested in your pick on this one. We got Perry versus Stockbridge.
Well, I tell you what, I am biased. I'm going to pitch that they are running the football right now.
Uh-huh.
And that kid that they have over there at running back, the running game travels. I don't care whether you're playing indoors, outdoors, and
Hmm.
this late in the season, when you're running the football that effectively, I think that they're going to be hard to beat.
Okay, okay. So Stockbridge, I know my girlfriend, she lives in Henry County, but Stockbridge is literally in her backyard. So
That's right.
I know they rooted for Henry County on that one, so for sure. The last game of the day, I think should be a good one. Thomas County Central versus Woodward Academy.
Yeah. So, again, one of those historical programs in Thomas County Central, getting back to the state championship, the Ed Pilcher days when they were winning multiple state championships. Uh, and so it's always good when you got those legacy programs in. Woodward has a storied history as well. But I'm gonna go again. I'm gonna go with South Georgia. I'm gonna go with TCC.
Okay, okay. South Georgia, man, they loving you right now. Love you right now. Probably not the people from Perry, but we'll see. And the last
Right.
few games on first game of the day, I kind of know where you're going with this one, but first game of the day is Savannah Christian versus Cedar Grove.
Yeah. Well, so one of my colleagues at work is from the Savannah area, and he's worried. He's worried. I think Cedar Grove has a chip on their shoulder.
Yep,
They've got
after
state
last
championships
season, yep.
after last season. Yeah. And they played a very tough schedule at the beginning of the year, and I think that has prepared them. My wife is a DeKalb County native, so there's a little bit of a rooting factor there.
Yep, rooted for
Um,
sure.
but but I just think this Cedar Grove team is probably a more battle tested team than even some of those other state championship teams that they've had. And so I'm going to go with Cedar Grove on this.
Yep. Look, I can bring my bias into this. When you get cheated like you did, I'm just gonna call it what it is. When you get
Yeah,
cheated,
yeah,
you did last year in the state title game against Sandy Creek, and it goes viral like that, you have more of a chip on your shoulder. So good luck to Grove. The second game of the day we have is Coffee versus Creekside. Creekside, a team that has managed to get in the state tournament and go far, but just hasn't got quite there the last few years. Who you taking in that game?
Well, I remember I remember when the program started at Creekside, um, and the assistant head coach, associate head coach at um, Georgia Southern there, Kevin Whitley, started that program,
Okay.
and he did a tremendous job. Um, and Coach Downs went over there and won a state championship. His younger brother is playing safety now for Alabama, freshman.
Hmm.
So so there is some history, in that Creekside program. Coffee has a tremendous amount of history as well.
For sure.
Um, the Metro people may be kind of upset with me on this one.
Oh.
I'm rooting for Creekside, but if I had to lay money on the line, I'm gonna have to go with Coffee.
Okay, one of my friends, he's from there, so I think he would love you for that one. Of course, we got about 3 minutes left here, but of course, the game that you even said that you're gonna watch, Milton versus Walton. I think these are two highly touted offensive teams. Who do you pick for this game? What do you see the outcome as?
I think it's going to be a very exciting football game. I think that there'll be some big plays early on. I don't think either of the teams has the ability to run away from the other one because both of them can score the football. Both of them can move the ball through the air. What I saw from Walton in their run game,
Mhm.
they have a pretty good 1-2 punch with the little speedy guy that they bring in, and then the big back, the kid Bodiford, I think is his name. And then their offensive line is impressive. And then they have, a couple of guys that they bring in off of that offensive line from time to time to play defense. And that makes that defensive line formidable too. And I think this will be a game where a lot of points potentially scored. But I think it's going to come down to who can control the clock when they have to, who can get a lead and maybe eat some time off the clock and have long scoring drives. And right now, I think Walton is the team that I think has the best ability to do that. So I'm
Okay.
gonna have to go with Walton.
Okay. Okay. Got 2 minutes left here. You broke up when you made this pick, but I know with Bowden versus Manchester, you said you were rooting for Manchester, but I want to make sure I had got that in because I know it had broke up. You said it.
Well, yeah, and I said I'm gonna have to go with Bowden, and I don't want Bowden to win. Like I said, Bowden beat Greene County
Mhm.
in the second round,
Mhm.
so not too happy about that. Um, but in this instance, defending state champions in that Greene County game, and not just because it's Greene County, but that was a very close ball game. Came down to the last play. That had a little bit of controversy in it
Yep.
too.
Yep.
Um, but I think when you go through a test like that, particularly as a defending state champion, that kind of wakes you up.
Yep.
And lets you know that you got to bring your A game, and people aren't going to just lay down for you. And I think that they're just going to be tough to beat.
I got you. I got you. Well, Mr. Grant, I appreciate you, of course, speak with me coming on for the podcast. For those out there, first time viewers, please subscribe to the podcast on YouTube. It's Bring Your A Game with A-Patt. We're also on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Apple Music, however you say it, and iHeart. And again, Mr. Grant, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see how the results go this weekend, and hopefully we can bring you back on in the future.
Looking forward to it. Should be some good football. I still think the state of Georgia has some of the best high school football, best high school sports, not just football. So I hope people tune in and enjoy it. If you can get down to the Mercedes Benz, definitely do that. The kids need your support, and enjoy it. Have a great weekend, and thank you for having me.